Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lamont Weber, and we're very privileged today to have with us Kevin Annett, who is the Field Secretary of the International Common Law Court for Justice. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, Alfred. It's very good to be with you, especially today.
Yeah. Now, I understand that you're in Kitchener, Ontario, and you're going to be going to Montreal tomorrow. Now, there was a statement released by the International Court yesterday about takedown actions that took place both in Montreal and in Ireland as to satanic sacrifices that were to take place in those two locations. Could you tell us more about what happened from the reports that you know now? And because this has really garnered people attention, and they want to know more about it, and they want to know in particular both the eyewitness evidence and any documentary evidence that we may have in terms of photographs, videos, other documents, warrants, all that sort of thing.
Right. Well, this is a very important breakthrough. It's I think on the same level as when we compelled the resignation of Joseph Ratzinger last year. It's really been in the works for several months. In June, the Common Law Court authorized the formation of these direct action units. Now, these are at two levels. The public face of this has been the local common law courts organizing sheriffs and training people as peace officers. But the more covert aspect is in Europe, they've been training two sets of, they call them Alpha and Beta. These are two six-man units that are serving military or former military personnel who are highly trained professionals. And their job has been literally to stop these satanic rituals. After the evidence surfaced in the court of the Ninth Circle and how the sacrificial rituals are continuing every month, literally, at certain locations. We have the locations now, we have the names of people involved, and so these DAU units were trained to go in and stop them. The two places that were targeted for yesterday, August 15th, was in Montreal and in Dublin, Ireland. Now, part of the cover story that went out, based on actual evidence, that at Marie-Rendemont Cathedral in Montreal, these sacrificial rituals were going on. That was emphasized in order to act as a decoy for the actual target, which is a private residence in Outremont, one of the more affluent areas in Montreal. And if people go to ITCCS.org, they can see the report, but let me summarize it. Basically, Friday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, and this is from a report issued by the commander of this unit that went in, the Alpha team went into the private residence in Outremont that they had under surveillance since August 4th. They only met one private security guard. They detained him, as well as another man who was on the premises who turned out to be a member of the cult who was preparing the house for the ritual that was to occur last midnight, like in other words, last night at midnight. Now, under questioning, the private security guard did identify that the ritual was taking place. He led them to a chamber beneath the basement. Now, according to the report, they found two small prison cells with wall shackles for shackling people, a central soundproof chamber containing a stone wall altar with apparent bloodstains on it, and they were sampled and bagged for analysis. These samples have already been sent off to Brussels. Also, they found an adjoining room holding locked cabinets where they had child pornographic material, articles of children's clothing, metallic torture devices, ceremonial swords, and film equipment. Now, all of this jives with it being a cult ritual center. Now, the male cult employee didn't answer any of their questions, But in the course, soon after that, another cult member arrived at the residence. She was detained and questioned. She was an older woman who was very unnerved by them being there, and she began to share information. She said that there were 3 participants that she knew of. In other words, there could have been more, but the 3 she knew of, she named 3 of them. A local Catholic bishop in Montreal who she didn't want to name, a man named Carey Brick, who turns out to be a corporate executive with Corporation in Minneapolis, and another American named Stephen Holding from Sun Valley, Idaho, who works with Sinclair Oil Limited. Now, these names do match the names that are in our archive as suspected participants in these Ninth Circle rituals.
Yeah, so, sorry, who was the second name right before Holding?
Carey Brick, and he turns out to be a senior corporate executive with Cargill Corporation in Minneapolis. Now, Cargill is one of the biggest food processing companies in America, and this has significance, which we can talk about a bit later. Anyway, this informant, the older woman, also claimed that the 2 children that were going to be used in the midnight ritual were being held at a separate facility at McGill University, but she didn't know where they were. She said their normal procedure was to bring them in a drug condition just before the ritual for security reasons. So in other words, not to be kept on the premises for very long, just during their grisly ritual. And she did confirm that they were Ninth Circle members. So basically what happened, they restrained these 3 prisoners, they took more samples, and they locked down the facility, and they waited for the others to show up. That didn't happen. Nobody else showed up, including the children. And they have to assume from that they were tipped off in some way, and they aborted the ritual. They let the security guard go. They have the 2 other cult members in custody at one of their facilities in Montreal, and they're under questioning right now. I hope to join them this week and take part in that questioning of these witnesses if they are held under warrants from the court, and this is also an action of a citizen's arrest. So it has lawful standing, to do what they did, and we'll see what happens from here. The other part of this report came from Dublin, where the second team was operating. They had no evidence that there was ritualistic activity happening at that time and date at the Pro Cathedral in Dublin. The only information they got was they confirmed the identity of one of these Ninth Circle members in Dublin as being a priest named Damien O'Reilly, who turns out to be a priest at Pro Cathedral, and he's actually the secretary, the assistant to the acting head of the Catholic Church in Ireland, Archbishop Dermot Martin. And they're, again, keeping that place under surveillance. And they're also assisting a common law court in Ireland, which is being established to investigate the ritual slaying of children at that Catholic facility at Chouam, where they found those 800 babies in a cistern. So again, this is going to be an ongoing action there as well.
Now, getting back to the Montreal action, the first question that comes up, of course, is the safety of the children that were being detained at McGill University. Is there any action being taken by the DAU Alpha team there to contact the local authorities so that they can try and chase down and try and locate those 2 children so that they can be brought to safety?
I don't have any information on that, Alfred. I receive encrypted messages from Brussels, and I've had one so far. What the encrypted message to me said was that it would be good if I went to Montreal, and I'll get more instructions when I get there. What I do know as well, however, is that they have other places under surveillance. This isn't a one-shot kind of action. There are other children, at risk right now, and it was also kind of suggested to me that they do have some help within the Montreal police force, which is why the cops didn't show up.
Yeah.
There are sympathetic police involved in this, but they're not able to come forward because, like in many situations, besides every honest cop, there's one involved with or influenced by these people.
Right.
And for the protection of the children, they can't broadcast generally what they're doing. This has got to be very covert because of who we're up against.
Now, so that it sounds like there might be a broader ring of the Ninth Circle that is operating in Montreal that would have received those children, that is perhaps grooming children, that is supplying children to other events, and that you're just beginning to hone in on this circle. Is that something that you're looking at?
Very much. As a matter of fact, we know that, for example, in our previous interview, we talked about Drangheta, the mafia who provide the children and the adolescents for these rituals, the human hunting parties, these ritual murders. We know they're very active in Montreal. This is one of the reasons that they're taking such careful measures, but definitely it's part of a much broader network. And the whole thing here is to let them see that we are not standing by just talking anymore, documenting that the common law court and those who support them in Europe are willing to intervene. Now, if you're one of these murderers who is involved, I imagine right now they're panicking. They're worried now that because they've been penetrated. Because the one thing, when you're a member of that kind of cult, the one thing that you need is security and anonymity. And if there's any chance that anonymity is about to be ruptured, which it has been, they're going to start falling out among themselves. They're going to go into hiding. We are saving lives just by doing this kind of thing. The matter here is to extend it to encourage others, including within the police, to take these actions themselves. This is one of the reasons that this action was taken.
Now, I can see how currently, although because they have, in the case of the UK Queen, they still have a standing army to protect them, and they're still claiming sovereign immunity. And that's the case as well with regard to the two popes that are still currently in the Vatican, although they also have engaged in infanticide. In the case of these cult members, especially the two Americans that have been named, in this interview, they are up for murder charges, aren't they?
Not just murder, criminal conspiracy, crimes against humanity, obstructing justice, all of that is included in it. When they are, indicted for these crimes. Now, the thing to understand about so-called sovereign immunity is, don't forget, because of the verdict of the common law court, that immunity is null and void. We have issued stand-down orders to the police in these countries and to the judges and others who are helping facilitate these crimes. That could be why the Montreal police are cooperating. I know in Quebec, and strategically it was good we went in at Montreal, because within Quebec, there's no great love for the Queen of England. And these Montreal police, I'm sure, would be quite willing to say, well, great, if she's being deposed lawfully, then maybe we have more freedom of action here. So this is the kind of ripple effect we're trying to create. Police will now, it's just kind of like with the residential school crimes. Once we created enough legitimacy for the issue of looking at genocide in Canada, insiders began to come forward, confirming, because it was a safer environment to talk about these crimes. We hope to do the same thing here with the child trafficking and child sacrifice. Now insiders, as has already happened, will feel safer to come forward and say, yeah, they were involved, and then it'll be hopefully a reciprocal process at that point.
So when you plan to go to Montreal tomorrow, you will be joining the Direct Action Unit Alpha team in Montreal that now has in custody exactly who?
Two members of we know they're members of the cult because they admitted it. The man didn't, but it was kind of obvious by association that he was performing a job for them. And these are, they haven't released their names or anything. One's an older woman, and he's middle-aged. But like I say, I'm going to get instructions when I get there, so I can give you a better idea, like after tomorrow. After Monday, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now, have these individuals requested legal counsel? I'm just sort of, these are the automatic questions that I ask as a lawyer,
Right.
you know, to protect the ITCCS from any legal liability or question of kidnapping in terms of
Well,
the interface with the civil authorities.
right. Well, of course, it's not an issue of kidnapping. It's a issue of citizen arrest. There was,
Citizen arrest.
under the citizen arrest laws in Canada, actually, they've been broadened. So prior to just last year, you had to have witnessed a crime in order to detain somebody. Now, if you read the Citizen Arrest Act, it says that if you suspect someone of posing a serious threat to somebody in the community, you have the right to detain them until the police can be called. Clearly, there was a lot of evidence that these people at this residence were about to be engaged in a serious crime against children, and they had every right to detain them. So that was the right under which, you know, if a lawyer wants to argue against them in court, we'll say, bring it on. Let's have an examination for discovery with your clients. Yeah. We have found evidence on the site of torture devices, of child pornography, of children's clothing.
And you have videotaped and you have photographed these devices.
We have been told that the Alpha team, one of their members, was photographing this entire process. They have photographic evidence. The blood stains were tested. They took samples. They took samples of the children's clothing. You know, as you normally do. These are trained professionals. This evidence has already been sent off to Brussels for independent analysis. We knew it had to be gotten out of Canada quickly, and that has already been sent to Europe.
Right.
You know, within a few days, I'm sure we'll hear more about all that.
But, and I'm just asking these questions because they occur to me naturally as a former professor of law and judge. It seems to me that even under the citizen arrest laws of Canada, that the DA, the Direct Action Unit, then would be under an affirmative action within a reasonable amount of time to then turn the suspects over to the Montreal police, that is to the local authorities. Is that not correct?
I mean, this is not a vigilante group. They are following the warrant given to them by the court, and I'm sure that's, you know, especially since the rumor is that they're already working with the Montreal police. I'm sure that
I see. Okay, good.
And don't forget, the main thing they wanted is to interrogate these people, to prevent the ritual from happening, to get some solid evidence, which they've already gotten.
Yeah.
And, you know, hopefully this will cause a domino effect, is what we're hoping.
Okay, good. I'm just, these are,
I get it.
Yeah, these are questions which are coming up, and I mention this because, as you know, the ITCCS has a very large group now in Facebook. There are over 6,000 members, and today, following the announcement of this news, we had an illegal intrusion into the group by a known person named Greg Renouf. And he could have not entered into that group because he's not a member, other than with the cooperation of some agencies such as the NSA.
Well, definitely.
Or, you know, and he and another person who came in to act as agents provocateurs began to question whether this action actually took place, whether there was any evidence, and so people, you know, so there is that sort of atmosphere there.
Of course.
Yeah. So I want to I'm asking these questions to ensure that not only within the common law court area, but also within the civil law area, all of the due process constraints and requirements have been duly followed. So I just ask you that.
I don't worry about what agent provocateurs say. It's designed to create confusion and get us going down false paths.
Right.
What we need to stay focused on is the simple fact that children are being killed that under common law and the law of the United States and Canada, there is a thing called a necessity defense. And if there's a threat to somebody, you have the right to break the law if it will cause a greater good. And even if we're in a position of breaking the law, if that will save the life of a child, I would like to see any lawyer or anyone suggest that that wasn't justified. So there's that. There's also the fact that this Renouf fellow has already been condemned by groups across Canada as a provocateur. And he and Heather Martin and other people he work with somehow have the ability to access all of our private emails. Now, who has the technology to do that? Clearly they're government sponsored. Clearly they're in there now as a, and this is a good sign, it's kind of that reverse litmus test. As soon as these people pop up their heads, it means, yes, we're on the right track. Look at how the state is reacting.
Right, right. Now, switching just a second from the Direct Action Unit Alpha team in Montreal to the Direct Action Unit Beta team in Dublin, you say that they encountered no ritualistic activity at the cathedral, saying that it was canceled or moved to another location. Did they find anything else? Could you give us a status of where things stand there?
My understanding is that the folks in Dublin had unexpected difficulties that they're not talking about yet. Because it was, as people have pointed out, it's absurd to announce where you're going to go hit and then expect the people to be there. The announcements of the locations of the cathedral were made deliberately as a decoy. Now, we knew that those cathedrals were being used, but we didn't mention the site where we're actually going in. My understanding is in Dublin, that didn't quite come off, and there were some difficulties, and we're still going to find out what happened. But this person they named, Damien Riley, is very significant because when I first got contacted by people in Dublin, Damien O'Reilly had been named already as the man who had been doing the Archbishop's job there in covering up child abuse, in silencing witnesses, and now here he's named as a member who's suspected as being a member of the Ninth Circle. So, I mean, this is more confirmation of what we've been doing, and I'll actually be going over there in September, and I'll be able to have more information on the ground about this stuff, just like we'll from Montreal this week.
Now, just to take a follow-up question, there are rumors surfacing now that one of your convicted defendants of the Common Law Court of Justice, Pope Francis Bergoglio, may visit North America, may visit the United States in the forthcoming future. And so that would place him on North American soil and within reach of direct action units that are trained here in North America. And there has been a difficulty, of course, in being able to reach and arrest this particular defendant because of the issues of the 1929 treaty with the Vatican and all of the security there. What are your feelings about this forthcoming trip if it occurs?
Well, first of all, the trip, I mean, is part of this whole geopolitical thing going on where Obama and the Queen and others are frantically trying to keep the Vatican in their camp as Vatican bank money is being, put into Russia and China, and they definitely, Putin is warming up to Rome, and they're developing a relationship there. So, I mean, that's part of the bigger thing going on here. Because of that, obviously the governments here are going to play the "We Love Jorge" bandwagon to the hilt, and we are obviously going to attempt to arrest the guy when he's here. Now, part of that isn't simply us acting. We are also approaching the police in these cities. We're asking city officials to tell the Pope he's not welcome, that he's a banished figure because of his conviction. There are going to be a lot of things that are going to be tried. I think the main thing we need to do is to realize that we have to mobilize the community on this. And there's going to be various ways of doing that. So, we'll certainly make it uncomfortable for the guy. If we can't actually perform the arrest, certainly make it known that he's not welcome. And it's kind of like anything when people say, well, how are you going to do it? It's not a matter of how we can do it. It's a question of how all of us are going to stop these crimes from happening.
Right. Now, switching over to the Common Law Court of Justice in Brussels, they are now going to transform, and in September are going to become more of a commission, a fact-finding commission and an investigatory commission approach to really get into the details of what the broad verdict was. Are you in touch with that process, or do you plan to go over to Europe, or what is the status there?
I'm scheduled to be there during the first half of September to Brussels. That's one of the reasons I'm going in September, to kind of coincide with those meetings to set up the commission. It's the whole point of it is to be a broader effort. We find that with the limited resources the court has had, they've not been able to protect witnesses properly. One of their best investigators has disappeared right off the map. You know, there are continual attacks and threats being made. They need help. Look what happened to Laurent Louis in the Belgian parliament when he came forward and not only named the Dutch Prime Minister or Belgian Prime Minister, but also told us that he wanted to cooperate with the court. He got taken out immediately. This is a longer-term process. We need more support, and it's a real struggle to build that. So I think that was part of what the decision was in setting up a permanent commission. The court has made two very important verdicts involving two popes and two issues of genocide and child trafficking. Now the ball is in everybody's court, including in the courts of other countries. And how we can enforce these verdicts on the ground, that's the important thing now. To give you an example of that, one of the things we just posted at ITCCS.org was a film footage of one of our best organizers here in Kitchener, Steve Finney. When he was driving his car, he was stopped. He would not cooperate with the police, so they pulled a gun on him. And this is right on film. You can look at it. We'll be posting it soon at ITCCS.org. They pull a gun on him and then smash his window and try to drag him out the window. This is the kind of response of the state to when we are announcing our sovereignty, when we're saying that people have the right to convene their own courts. This is the reaction. So everybody has to take this very seriously. And within Canada, the broader context of this is, in October, the Republic of Ghana is being established as a constitutional body. It will, in its constitution, grant citizens the right to form these common law courts, make citizen arrests, and it's then that we'll be saying, this is one of the ultimate kind of directions we're taking with this, creating a new arrangement altogether, which will allow these citizen groups to operate and the common law courts. So people have to look at this in a bigger way, but also take personal action to stop this from happening. It's not a matter of, you know, being an internet activist anymore. People have to turn off the machines and get out there and enforce these verdicts in their communities.
Right. Now, what are the mechanisms for people who feel moved? You know, they get an inner signal that now is the time and this is the mission for me to become involved in the common law movement. And what is the mechanism for them to become involved?
Well, I mean, I think that begins within ourselves, recognizing not only this is a battle for all of humanity, it's a spiritual warfare we're involved in, and you cannot enter this lightly. You have to do the necessary personal and spiritual preparation to enter into this. Once that's happened, we find that we tend to be linked up automatically almost with like-souled people, and those people need to be organized. We're not out, and this was the big mistake I made in Canada for many years. You try to educate the general population. They're not in a position where they're able to act on it. They're too locked into the fear and controlled paradigm. We're out for a creative minority, for those who have already broken from the system, who are able to stand within their own sovereignty. Like when people come up and say, what authority do you have to do this? I just point at your own heart and your own mind and say, that's where the sovereignty comes from, people. This is our basis of authority. We have to work with people like that who have already awakened to that. We're not going to waste our time anymore on the naysayers and the people who tell us why something can't happen or who are operating out of that fear and dependency model. we need to organize that minority people within the common law court movement, within these direct action units that protect children, that stop the criminals in high places, and really disestablish these institutions that are responsible. So, you know, you can find all of that discussion at ITCCS.org. The Republic of Canada, excuse me, republicofcanada.com will be up online soon, the website for the Republic in Canada. There's infinite ways people can be involved. Just write to us, itccscentral@gmail.com.
Right, right. Now, in Europe, you're also going to be expanding in the ITCCS is going to be expanding into Germany, correct?
Yeah, I actually have 6 cities I'm already speaking in during mid to late September. So yeah, there's interesting, like I say, domino effect starting. We even have people now surfacing in Rome. They were hiding for several years because of the arrest of several of the people who were involved, you know, in networks that are working with us. But now they're surfacing again, wanting us to come down. I've had invitations to come to Rome and Milan and Savona. So, you know, this seems to be gaining a new energy these days.
Now, all of us in this movement have found that one way that the forces that are attempting to suppress humanity attack movements like the common law movement is to attack the funding of the movement. How exactly does ITCCS function in terms of any necessary expenses? How does that function?
Well, again, there's 2 phases to it, because in a war, you have one phase, and then you have the actual command structure, which is underground, which is separate, which cannot be detected and destroyed. The command structure within the tribunal is hidden, as are its sources of funding. Within the public arena, which is where I act, I mean, I'm connected to that other structure, but my main purpose is to be one of the public figureheads of this. We operate primarily just through community funding. It's helped. I mean, most of my travel is now paid by donations online through our PayPal at itccs.org. There have been individual funders who have set up kind of a travel fund for me and other key organizers. We're now even at a point where we're able to fund groups that are very active and successful, like the Coventry Common Law Court, the court they're setting up here in Kitchener. The people who are most active we're able to help now financially. So it's beginning to take off. But these, like the direct action unit that acted yesterday in Montreal, could not operate through, you know, dimes and nickels from the community. It has serious funding coming out of Europe from sources that are never going to be disclosed.
Yeah. Now, have you thought of using things like crowdfunding? You know, all of these new kind of
What's crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding. That's the latest and greatest wave. Crowdfunding is there are various sites, websites on the internet now, which we can send you, and one puts up a project like the common law court, and you say, we need like $30,000 to do this, and
Right.
then people donate.
Yeah.
You know, and then you reach a target, and then they give you that money. The only thing is that there have been instances where if the project is really one that is a mover and shaker, some of these websites have been known to withhold the money at the end of the fundraising drive. So that's the kicker in this case.
I don't, you know, personally what I find, Alfred, is the best organizing that happens is when you're face to face with people. Like, I've just been meeting with 3 or 4 different groups in Southern Ontario, sitting down with people, talking to these ex-cops, others who want to get on the ground and start arresting these corrupt judges and setting up common law courts. The best contact is one face-to-face, and then you pass the hat and you raise a few $100 there.
Yeah.
It's that kind of guerrilla action that sustains a movement. That's what I like to rely on. And then you know who you know and trust one another.
Yeah.
You know who you're dealing with on an email. It's that simple, right?
Right. Okay, good. So what do you see now? Could you give us a picture? We're in August, and we have you know, traditionally Labor Day has been kind of when things sort of get back into gear after the summer. What do you see for this period of September through the end of 2014 for the ITCCS and the Common Law Court?
Well, now that the court has completed its second case, all of its resources and energy are going to be going to helping people on the ground who are making the citizen arrests, who are taking the direct action against the system. There's going to be a real kind of decentralizing of the effort and helping all the local organizers. I mean, to give you an example, the Common Law Court movement affiliated with us in Australia is now so extended that they have district organizers in Perth and in Melbourne and now in New Zealand. All of these people are holding workshops and help and support. So we're going to be sending people out to help people like there. The United States is phenomenal. We're now active in 31 states. We have sheriffs that are training their deputies in the common law. We need to do a lot of on-the-ground organizing with those people. So you're going to see a lot of kind of mole work, if you like, extending the networks and broadening and deepening this. This is how you get the community involvement and how you sustain a movement. So it may not be
by mole, you mean grassroots work.
That's right, underground, okay. Extending the roots.
Underground.
And taking the direct action now that needed in the communities. So there may not be the kind of dramatic actions we've had about, you know, indicting these popes, actually taking down these child sacrificial sites and that, but you're going to be seeing a lot of that solid community organizing. You need to build up a movement. So again, I would urge people to contact us, build it in your community. We'll have the resources to help you.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions that came up in our Facebook group, and incidentally, those viewers that are members of Facebook, we know that it's an infiltrated site, but still, it's a great place to kind of gather. We put up a question and we say, well, what should be some of the future issues? And one of the questions that came up was, okay, so there have been some governmental in terms of Government of Canada and the UK Crown, and some church, some religious in terms of the Vatican and the Anglican and the United Church of Canada. But what about the corporate? What about the financial, the banks? All of these suppressors of humanity, which are not being prosecuted, which have committed tremendous war crimes because the judicial institutions are compromised there. That is perfect because there are legal standards there that can be adapted in common law courts. So yeah. So what about those areas?
Well, you know, in a way, that's even more vital. It's kind of like when we're talking about the Republic here in Canada. One of the most important things people are saying now, it's fine to have a statement of principles. How are we going to change society at the grassroots? How are we going to take back power from these banksters, for example? You know, it's fine to say we're going to cancel all debt and everything, but how do we do it on the ground? This is the same thing with this work. We've got to go after the people who are profiting from this. And don't forget, human trafficking, child trafficking is a huge profitable industry. That's why it's being bankrolled by Bank of America, JP Morgan, HSBC, who admit they do, you know, money laundering for the drug cartels, who are the funders of these child trafficking networks. So, for example, in this latest Montreal takedown, these two guys were named, these two corporate executives. Now, we know Cargill is deeply involved in human trafficking. You know, the food processing industry, big agribusiness, and the aerospace industry had these long connections with these satanic networks, with these post-war Nazis, Nazification of America. All of the stuff you can read very thoroughly. So obviously one of the inside informants told us that the Cargill corporate headquarters in Wayzata, Minnesota, is actually a center of this ritual child sacrifice. And so, I mean, it obviously has many levels, but having a focus now on the corporate aspect of this is really vital. It's in fact the most vital when you think about it. Follow the money, follow those who profit, and stop their system from operating, that's where you're going to get results, definitely. So I very concur with that approach.
Very good. Yes, and so how do you see in practical logistical sense the International Common Law Court or the ITCCS actually branching out? Is this something that happens organically? Is that what happens?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of organization, but it takes a lot of work on the ground. So you know what I would say to everybody on Facebook and everybody who has these very valid questions, I would say to them, okay, take a day that you would have spent on Facebook and get some of our flyers and go into the local church or go into the local bank or go into the agencies that you know are profiting off it and confront these people. We have stand-down orders. Every one of you should be distributing these stand-down orders to the police, to the courts in Canada, in England, in any Commonwealth country. That's what starts the critical mass building when you're doing that. And I would say, you know, engaging actively in your community like that is a way to really build this movement.
I.e., there have been stand-down orders that have been lawfully issued by a common law authority. And so now they have to be served upon the organizations and institutions that are still operating under the purported authority of worldwide criminal organizations like the UK Crown, like the Vatican. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you've got to walk away from this now, folks. I mean, it's like they are disestablished authorities. We find this all the time, like it's Steve Finney here in Kitchener. He says to the police all the time, you have no authority. You'll see in this video we post, he's saying to them, you're under the jurisdiction of the Republic of Canada now. There's no Crown authority anymore. It was a fiction in the first place. It's a criminalized, it's a criminal body that's been duly convicted. You know, you're colluding in a crime, so you have the right now. It's like when you see all these empty churches. You have the right to go in and occupy these Catholic, Anglican, and United churches under the law. They have forfeited their authority and assets under verdicts coming out of common law courts and international law itself. So, I mean, you know, it's a matter now of what people do with this knowledge and this evidence, not disputing in fine detail the evidence. We're past all that. It's now what we all do together that counts.
Yeah. Now, what would you say to people who live in the United States, because they aren't under the UK Crown, they're under a slightly different sovereignty, the corporation of the United States? What would you say to them?
Restore the Republic. And there's a movement all over America to do that. I mean, people have heard about this militia that's intervened, you know, with the shootings that have occurred in the U.S. These militias are very, very organized, and they are connected to not just the common law movement, but citizens on the ground that quite independently are taking back their country. They have a real head start on all of us in America. They have locally elected county sheriffs who have the right to convene courts, to even arrest crooked judges. We have now 4 sheriffs working with us to try to do that. In America, they simply have to reclaim what they've always had. We may never have had that in Canada, but they always have had that implicitly and in their own constitution. So to do that, you're going up against the de facto corporate government. And it's a matter of, I mean, in effect, what we're seeing in America is the launch of a new civil war. It's happening now at many levels. It's the de jure versus the de facto governments, and that's happening as we speak. So, I mean, it's really a matter of getting clear and then following your conscience. When people say, what should I do next? I often tell them, just ask your conscience that and know your history.
Well, do you advise people who are Americans, who are in the U.S. and who are called to become involved in the common law movement, to that is, do they become involved in ITCCS or in the common law grand jury movement, or what?
Those are aspects of something more fundamental. I mean, in the tribunal, we're a resource. We're like a catalyst.
Yeah.
And a tactical support group that comes in and helps people in their own struggles. The real thrust has to be with men and women reclaiming their land. And within America, it's reestablishing the Republic of the United States of America. not the United States, which is the corporate body. There's been a lot of stuff. We have the knowledge of that. It's all over the internet. It's now a matter of how, you know, people reestablish that. Now, the details of how they are going about that, there isn't any one model for it. It's happening in many different ways, just like it did in 1775 in America. There hasn't been that Continental Congress yet in America to bring it together, but it's coming about, just like it is in Canada, in Winnipeg at the end of October.
Yeah, could you tell us a bit about the Republic of Kanata, and just for folks who are tuning in for the first time, that's Kanata, correct?
Yeah, that was the original Mohawk word. It means our village. Canada is the corporate body, registered in the New York Stock Exchange, but Kanata is the sovereign republic that arises out of the sovereign authority of each man and woman on this territory. There have been groups operating in literally every province and territory, including with considerable Indigenous involvement. There's a whole commission set up by the organizing committee dealing with finding the alliance with Indigenous nations within Canada to create a real federation, a federated republic of equal nations. The organizing committee in Winnipeg is now in the process of having delegates elected from all the different regions to come to Winnipeg. But we also recognize the vast nature of Canada means it's also necessary to have regional councils set up. So while the convention will be going on between October 27th and 31st, there will be regional gatherings occurring where the policies can be debated, where the aspects of the Constitution can be hammered out, and the final input will be coming from all over the country, not just those who make it to Winnipeg. So people need to know that. republicofcanada.com will be up online this week. You can write to republicofcanada@gmail.com is the main website. Ask for Colin Sullivan, the secretary. And you know, people can go get copies of the Constitution now and look at the vision of Canada that's being formulated. You know, it really is a continuation of the attempt in 1837 to establish a republic. And it's kind of interesting. Yesterday, I actually drove out past London, Ontario, to where my ancestors settled when they came from England in 1820. And I was looking for the grave of my great-great-great-grandfather, Philip Annett, who actually took up arms to try to overthrow the crown in 1837. I think, well, you know, we're just continuing what my grandfather started, and many patriots started in 1837, to get rid of this crown, this corrupt clique of bankers and bishops and offshore, you know, politicians who really run the country at the cost of really everybody. So we're really continuing this vision that started, you know, almost 200 years ago now in Canada.
Right. Now, yeah, you're going to be heading tomorrow to Montreal to join the Direct Action unit. Do you have any words for our viewers, sort of what vision you're going to be taking with you? Because that seems like a pretty singular mission with a lot of potential, you know, upside, but also volatile, you know, situations.
I frankly don't know what's going to happen, Alfred. You know, we're a few people. We're the cutting edge, right? And it's very easy to chop off the cutting edge, to break off the spear, the tip of the spear, if you like, if we don't have backing. We already know Drangheta has put a contract out on me and on other people involved in this, right? There's nothing guaranteeing anything, but what we do know is that we do have kind of hidden support within the system that we aren't even aware of until you push this matter further. But what people need to find again in themselves is we know children are being killed and trafficked as we speak. And if we are not willing to put our own bodies between the killers and those children, then we don't have the right to talk about anything. It's now time for people to take action if you care about anything, including our own children. So I would say that, you know, we've got to put our divisions aside, put the disputes aside, and rally around this. And this is, you know, part of the spirit in which I'm acting. That's really what's kept me going, and that's what should keep anybody going in this work. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's the thing that's foremost in my mind now. It doesn't matter if they take out individuals. This spirit is going to carry on, and These criminals know their days are numbered, and they are, I'm sure they're in panic mode right now, like I said before.
Yeah. Now, what specifically can viewers and people do who really want to support ITCCS, want to support what's going on in Montreal, in Ireland, what's going on at the Common Law Court, and really take this movement and join its critical mass and push it forward? For example, to get it into the mainstream news. This has not yet been reported on the mainstream news.
Nor will it ever be. I mean, it's kind of like in Canada. They've acknowledged now tens of thousands of children have died. Are they ever quoting any of the evidence I dug up to confirm that in 1996? I mean, it will never be quoted. It will never be taken seriously by the corporate media. We're not looking to them. We're our own media. We find that they tend to tag along after the fact, after it's been proven. But we need to not expend our energy in that direction. We need to keep our own power and our own counsel on this. And I would say to anybody who's interested, do what you're doing. Write to us, itccscentral@gmail.com. We're getting a lot of interest in Montreal. We're getting people there to organize protests, church occupations, to act as a tactical support group for these other, takedowns that are happening. So, just continue to take this seriously and put your money where your mouth is, frankly.
Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of this segment. Are there any final words that you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Well, I'm passing on to each one of you the responsibility that if anything happens to me or the people who are doing this, you have the responsibility to carry this on now. And I personally give you that. I'm commissioning each one of you to carry this on. Learn and take your knowledge and put it into practice. Make citizen arrests against these known child raping priests. Don't allow people to put money in the collection plates of these churches. Help, occupy these facilities and stop the killings. This is simple what we need to be doing. Your heart and mind tell you what to do. Now just act on it.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin, for taking time out at this critical moment, and we wish you every success, and we look forward to your joining us again in the future as events develop.
Thank you. And just to remind people, itccs.org, and I will give you an update this week from Montreal again, Alfred, and we'll carry this on.
Excellent. Very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.